What's going on, guys? It's your boy Ray coming at you live from somewhere on this Memorial Day Monday. Wanted to chat with you real quick about one Cam Johnson and kind of a return to our season year in review series, kind of getting into the player portion of that series. And it's not going to come out in any particular order, just who I feel like talking about that day. Today it's going to be Cam, just because I feel like that's going to tie up the conversation, I think, around in some way adjacent to the Michael Porter saga to kind of make it a trilogy of sorts. And I'll probably link those videos in the description or the post screen cap. But to get into it, we traded for Cam, I should say, for Michael Porter and a first round pick. That's what we got. Now, he does make a good amount less than Michael did, 15, $20 million, something along those lines. He was brought in to kind of replace his role as a floor spacer and doing so as a guy that can have a bit of a more well-rounded game. I think was always the intention, somebody who can dribble. I think that's the large critique against Mike that people had. To review his numbers on the year, he put up 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists on 54, 43, 84 splits in the regular season. And, just kind of keeping it at the regular season, I thought he was fine. In the aggregate, he had sections of the year where he was really good. I would say the latter half of the year, latter third, whatever you want to call it, once he returned from injury, and an early portion of the year where I thought he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But when your aggregate gets to 43% from three, I think you probably hit that check mark of being a floor spacer for sure, who can do a little bit more in the ball handling department. I mean, 2 assists per game is not a huge upgrade over Mike's, I think, one. And it's probably something closer to like 1.5 aggregate. It's probably rounded a little low. But where I think we lost something a little bit is the rebounds. 4 rebounds a game is a little lower. It's not really what you want from a forward. But I think you will probably take the lower price point in the aggregate. That first round pick, I think, changes the conversation a little bit, especially when Denver is in the position that it is right now, talking about trying to go out and make upgrades to the team. And, well, you traded your 2032, which is probably one of the most valuable picks you have. But we're not. I've already given my thoughts about the trade and the valuation there, but just speaking about his season, where I think he really shined is the shooting in the regular season. Where I think you really need more from that spot is the rebounding. I thought as a defender, he was in the right place a little bit more often. He's a little more active more often than Mike was. At the same time, I do think he's a little bit smaller than Mike was as well, where I think teams look at the Nuggets and kind of to the point of what Jaden McDaniels, sorry, I should say, spoke on the team as a team that is full of guys who you can attack. You can attack, run down the list. Unfortunately, as much as I think Cam is a savvier defender, I think he's on that list still of guys from a physicality, athleticism perspective who teams are going to feel comfortable attacking in isolation and going at one-on-one. So you gain some team defense there, I think, but also you kind of expound upon your larger problem of like the athleticism gap. To kind of transition into the playoffs, I thought he had a rough go of it for the majority of Denver's playoff run. Now, what I'm about to list off is you got to put it in the context of like it's a low sample size. It's only 6 games. And one of those games, game 6, he had a great game. And if you want to call that, how you want to weigh that based on the fact that it was an elimination game compared to a lot of the other games where he performed a lot worse, that's going to be, I'm going to leave that up to you. Leave a comment, find me on Twitter. I'm at Ravon Hackshaw. You want to talk to me? Maybe you disagree about what I'm about to say. I will say this, 14 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists in the playoffs on 74, 31, 86 splits. I thought he really impressed. Speaking again a little bit more about his higher acumen from a ball handling perspective, when the Nuggets were getting blitzed out of the two-man game and Jamal Murray's getting smothered and Jokic is getting smothered, in a way, Cam was able to do more off the dribble and attack the rack, and I think he did a good job in that. And it speaks to that in that 74% clip from 2-point range. At the same time, I do think 3 rebounds a game is not enough, unfortunately. And while he really shined inside the arc, and he had a great game 6 from a shooting perspective, 5 for 10 in that game, I believe, 31% is also not enough. And I think one of the things that I kind of come to is that if you want to be a floor spacer, it's not just about, it is about the efficiency, but sometimes you're going to be needed to be aggressive with that shot as well. And what I think I don't want to say Cam is a bad player, but what I think I'm disappointed in the most is just the volume. For a team that's going to create a lot of good looks, playing with Jokic, you're going to get a lot of good looks. 12 regular season points, 14 playoff points, I think speaks to a degree to which I question Cam's mentality, because for all of the same reasons that you can say he's a better ball handler, decision maker, initiator, I think it's those same reasons from a mental, psychological perspective that leave me wanting more from that spot as a floor spacer, which is to say, when you're a shooter, you don't think, you shoot. You don't hesitate and dribble and do a bunch of other things. You got to shoot. And as much as that value there is an upgrade from a ball handling perspective, I think Denver really has need from that spot when you're talking about giving Jokic and Murray more space to work together, which, as far as I know, we can talk about that a little bit later. Maybe we'll get to a Murray episode or a whole trade season conversation, but I think Denver needs something from a floor spacing department that can, and from a rebounding department, I think that's important too. From a forward spot next to Jokic, you need that physicality. So you need that space and you need the physicality, and I just don't think he did those things. I think he's a fine player. I would say like B- on the season. Like, he's fine. He's not going to be the reason you lose. He's not going to be the reason you win. For me, going forward, I don't really see him, if he is going to be on the Nuggets, I don't see him as a guy who you should feel like needs to start. Especially when you factor in his well-roundedness, when you talk about his skill set as a guy who can do a little bit of everything, who can shoot a little bit, who can dribble a little bit, who can pass a little bit, who can defend a little bit. Cool. I think that's way more of a valuable, like, 6th, 7th, 8th man guy off the bench who can kind of plug holes and really maximize his flexibility, rather than having him in the starting lineup, where what Denver really needs in the starting lineup is physicality, and closing games, I should say as well, is a guy who's not going to hesitate to shoot that kick out, and a guy who's going to bring it from a physicality perspective on the boards and defensively, that gives Jokic and Murray the leeway to be the more finesse oriented players that they are. And when you add Cam into that mix, I think you just have a little bit too much of the same thing there. Um, if you are going to trade Cam, I think he's probably one of the guys in. We'll probably talk about this again in trade conversations, but I think Cam is one of the guys on the team who has positive value right now, especially as an expiring contract, and who doesn't need to be somebody you build your whole team around necessarily, especially when you talk about his dollar amount. So on a team that doesn't have a lot of positive assets to move, as much as I like Cam and I think he can be a contributing member of the team, I do think it's probably more prudent if Denver considers trade offers for him this summer, just because you could probably get something for him and not have to give up things for him, right? And he's also not going to be a guy who is more valuable later. There are some guys on the roster. I think about Christian Brown in this way. I think about most of the young guys, your Julian Strawthers, your Zeke Najis, guys who just haven't found a form of utilization that I think makes sense yet for whatever reason, because it's their fault or because they're not being put in the position to do that thing. Cam, you kind of know what Cam is. He's kind of shown what he can do for you as a team, and I think teams will still like that. So when we are trying to make upgrades, I as much as I like him, I'd like to see him in those conversations. Even if he doesn't get traded, I think you have to consider it. That's it for me on Cam. That's my topic for today. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Happy Memorial Day weekend. If y'all are out camping, out doing whatever you do with your family, I hope y'all are well with your friends. Have a great time. And yeah, I'll see you next time.